And suddenly from heaven there came a sound like the rush of a violent wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. Divided tongues as of fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. We read this passage every year on Pentecost and celebrate this day when God's Spirit descended in fire, when tongues of fire rested on each of the disciples. Fire is the visible symbol of Pentecost for us. And that's why many of us are dressed in red, and we deck the church in red as well. Year-round, the hat worn by a bishop, the pointy one, a mitre, is a symbol of the tongues of flame that remind us of their link and ours to those earliest disciples. Today, we celebrate the day that the Holy Spirit filled the church, that we became alive with the Spirit of God, marked by fire that landed on the disciples, but neither hurt nor consumed them. Our passage is reference to a violent wind, and the fear that was struck in the people around them gives us a clue that the ancients would have experienced this differently from those of us who live after the phenomenal breakthrough in human history, when we learn to harness fire. Those of us whose lives are eased by the ability to use fire to fuel our transportation and to instantly provide light and heat in a safe, orderly fashion. But this has not always been this way. 15 years ago, I experienced a week that forever changed my understanding of fire, and I believe gave me a glimpse of how our ancestors would have known fire, and changed how I experience these church holidays that we surround in fire. During my final year of seminary, on a gorgeous Friday afternoon that was otherwise unremarkable, I stood and watched as flames consumed the chapel of our seminary. I had never seen such uncontrolled fire. It ravenously consumed every timber of the old wood building and went unquenched by what seemed like infinite amounts of water. When we finally stopped watching the flames, and even after my eyes closed that night, that fire remained present on campus through the unavoidable smell of smoke that seeped into everything around us. As etched into my mind as the sight of that fire is, the most powerful memories of that day are that smell and the feeling of powerlessness, of watching flames consume something so large and knowing no one had the ability to change the course of destruction that was going on. Even closer to home, 4 days later, my dad left on a trip, and only an hour away from home, he was struck by an 18-wheeler traveling at a high speed. His car exploded, and flames consumed his life, and life as we knew it, for all of those of us who loved him. Almost a week after I'd watched that ravenous fire consume our chapel, my family opened the few items that had been partially spared by the fire that took my dad. We opened his toolbox and his suitcase, found his clothes and tools mostly burned and soaking wet, but still packed in his meticulously organized, tidy way. What I remember most, though, was how frighteningly familiar the smell was. It consumed and radiated from those few relics of my dad's last hours. And with that smell, I remembered feeling that feeling of powerlessness in the face of a force of great destruction, a feeling helpless as something and someone I deeply loved was lost, and having no way to change the course of events. I think most of us have experienced that feeling. Most anyone who is loved well has known it. But for me, it will always be tied to the smell and the presence of fire, and the knowledge of what it can destroy, and how fragile the strongest of us are in the face of such a force. For those that went before us, fire, wind, and water were natural forces that were a constant, incomprehensible threat, terrifying powers of chaos and confusion in the ancient world. They were ever-present dangers in life, powers that couldn't be controlled and could always wreak havoc in their own lives or the lives of those they loved if they were so unlucky as to come into contact with them. Powers that could not be stopped once they started. And at Pentecost, we read of this strange phenomenon of tongues of fire on people's heads. It's important for us to remember that to the people present, this would have been an incredible sign of great terror being turned into a sign of something good, an uncontrollable force resting on people and not burning them. The transformation of these terrifying forces into symbols of power to proclaim Christ to all people is an amazing sign of hope and how powerful God's Spirit is present among us. At Pentecost, we remember that God used something that was known for its uncontrolled destruction and redeemed it, showing that this new Spirit at work in the church was continuing God's work to redeem and heal the very fabric of this creative world, every ounce of the world around us, and including us. In both Hebrew and Greek, the word for spirit also means breath and wind. Wind to the ancients is that invisible natural force that somehow exerted power over water and fire. From it, we learn something of this Spirit which comes at Pentecost. The Spirit of God who is present in our world, who ordered our world, who is more powerful than the chaos and confusion. We recall the first movement of that Spirit each time we bless water for baptism, when we remember how the Spirit of God moved over the waters at the beginning of creation. When I visit parishes around these islands, I have seen plaques and the memories of those who drowned, reminding me that those who have lived in these islands and inlets have long known the uncontrollable force of water too. For ancients, water especially represented unordered chaos and confusion, and it was a place that prohibited the creation and survival of life. The hope of the creation narrative was that God created our world with an order, not just a mechanical way to control it, but a way of life that is good and dynamic, that is beautiful and allows life to flourish and continue creating. We often forget this when we baptize babies, which has become a pretty normal, sedated thing in our culture. But for the early church, it was quite incredible that a power of death and destruction became the very part of this world that symbolized new life. We have largely lost the awe, the miracle of that statement that we make every time we baptize someone. For all those that went before us, the use of these elements of our liturgy, of fire and water, embodied the transformation that God can bring to the most troubling parts of our world. They were powerful signs of God's power that brings order to give birth to hope and the potential for new life. While we don't fear wind and fire and water in the same way as they did, I do believe there's still forces in our world that we fear because we know we cannot control them, and it makes us feel a similar futility. Today, I think of the war that rages on in the Middle East and seems only to grow. Think of the opioid epidemic and all the suffering it has brought. Think of pain that runs through our families and continues to tear us apart, and cancer and other diseases that all of modern medicine cannot contain. All these things and many more give us a glimpse towards understanding the chaotic powers that the ancients feared, because the struggle against them for us too often seems so futile and can render hope difficult to find. I do find hope, though, in a passage in Romans where we are told that all of our created world somehow groans and struggle, and that we have been given the Spirit, as we celebrate today, to join in that groaning. I think we all know that groan, the scream of hating what is happening in our world and not being able to change it, that primal cry of feeling futile against the powers around us, knowing that we can try and insulate ourselves but can never actually escape the threat, chaos, and confusion. The destructive forces of water, fire, and wind may not be as ever present for us today, but yeah, we know the groan that resounds throughout our world. We are not left alone with it, though. The hope we celebrate today is that the Spirit we receive on Pentecost does not leave us alone in our fear in our suffering. We are not left alone to just wait for the day when God redeems our world and makes it right. At Pentecost, we celebrate that the very Spirit of God, who is part of the creation of our world and governs our world and is stronger than any chaotic force, joins us with groanings too deep for words. And the Spirit joins us in a particular kind of groan, we are told, those of labor pains. These groans are pains of pregnancy, of birthing something new, not pains of life ending, but of life beginning. Not just an end to struggle, but the creation of new and unending possibility. Throughout these last 50 days, we have celebrated at Easter that we were set free from death and given life everlasting. Today at Pentecost, we as the church are born to embody the life we have been set free to live. The Spirit was given to the church on Pentecost so that we can be a people whose very being proclaims the work God is doing in our world. It is the Spirit in us that allows us to offer hope by pointing to realities that we believe in but cannot see. And our hope today, seen in the Spirit, showing up in fire and wind, is that the Spirit is working throughout our world to redeem and reclaim and heal every single element of creation, especially those we fear, especially those parts of our lives we cannot imagine being part of something good. The Spirit we get on Pentecost is the same Spirit that brought order to chaos and confusion, but not an order that mechanically controls the world. There is nothing about this Spirit that is safe or constrained. Rather, it is a Spirit whose love is far more powerful than we could ever imagine. This Spirit is the flame that flickers in the dark night of the soul, allowing us to dream when all seems futile. This Spirit groans with us and creation against our struggles and conceives hope inside of us when we cannot imagine new life. And the Spirit is brightly burning, the Spirit that is brightly burning that illumines to us the beauty of the world, the Spirit that takes our breath away at the awesome wonders around us, from grand mountains and seas to babies' toenails. From the color of a sunset to the moment when we catch a glimpse of the greatness of a soul that we see every day. The Spirit among us gathers in our groanings and our celebrations, promises us that no molecule of this world or of ourselves is beyond redemption, and sets us ablaze, men and women, young and old, rich and poor, with dreams of life and words of hope for all people. Today, may you know the Spirit as it shares in your groaning. And today, may we all see in the flames of Pentecost the wild beauty of light and life. Amen.